privilege, but it's an honor to be in your company. And I really have enjoyed following your work for many years. And like most scholars in the ancient theological field, I have all kinds of questions I would like to ask Zecharia Sitchin.
You mean my books did not make it all clear?
Well, yes, it made it all clear, but I've got a few more questions yet.
Okay, we'll do our best.
First of all, the word Yahweh, one of the words are names of God in the Hebrew. Is this to be understood as a proper name, or is Yahweh in fact in Hebrew describing something?
It is a descriptive term.
This is what I thought.
Yeah, it's not the proper name.
And could you explain to me exactly what it is describing?
It is usually translated, I am who I am, something like that. But more accurately, the tense, which in Hebrew it says eheyeh, asher eheyeh, is a future tense. And therefore it means I will be whoever I will be, in context of the whole biblical tale, and with a throwback to the Sumerian information that I provide in my books. It really means I can be whoever I choose to be. And this is explained in my latest book, Divine Encounters, who really God with the capital G was, is, and will be.
Yes. That, I think, is a very important point that Christians need to understand, because so many Christians today, especially fundamentalists, have a set concept in their mind, a pat religious belief system, and it does not seem to fit with the ancient and original Hebrew. And that's why I'm mostly concerned with establishing what did the original Hebrew words mean, and try and get a better handle on where we're going in our Western world religion. There was a professor I heard once talking about Yahweh and why I was interested in it, and he said it also implied stored power that when it is released, it has something to do with power being released, the creative power being released. Does that?
Well, that would not flow from this term, Yahweh. That is, whatever, an expansion into this particular professor's theology or beliefs. But obviously, if you contemplate, first of all, with the logic that God granted us, God with the capital G, you would say the following. Well, here we are on this planet called Earth by us, and intelligent life evolved here, according to the Sumerians, helped along a little by the Anunnaki from Nibiru, but there was evolution, which is, by the way, described very scientifically in the first chapter of Genesis. All those who think that there's a contradiction between Bible and evolution are totally wrong. So here we evolved, and we philosophically and otherwise say there is God, a creator of heaven, of earth, and of everything here. Now we say maybe there was, there is, there could be definitely life on Mars, another planet. Another question is, let's say so. Let's say that some beings evolved on Mars with our mental capacity. Did they have their own God? In other words, is there God of Earth and God of Mars and God of another planet? Now you say, no, that doesn't make sense. There must be one God, whatever we mean by that, of our whole solar system. Earth, Mars, doesn't matter. You say, okay, now we are discovering, which was logically, mathematically presumed before, we are discovering that there could be other solar systems and other planets around other stars or suns, and life could have evolved there. And Zecharia, Sitchin, and Jordan are sitting and discussing this whole issue. And they say, well, yes, that solar system where the seventh planet exists, etc., they have their God, their creator of... But we have our God. In other words, each solar system has a creator. Does this make sense? No. So you end up, if you really have an open mind, with saying there must be one power, to use the term that you mentioned from that professor, one power, one creator, one God, whatever we mean by that, that created everything, and not only created, in my opinion, but even determined the course of events from beginning to end, and not only in faiths like as ours, but at the end of my book, Divine Encounters, I give a translation of a Hebrew prayer, which is called the Lord of the Universe, which clearly says that this concept of Lord of the Universe, not of a solar system, not of a planet, was there before anything began, and will be there after everything ends. And, you know, a conference dealing with catastrophes might as well hear this, what I'm saying.
Yes.
That God will be there even after the last catastrophe.
Yes.
So this is really the concept of God. Now, how does it fit in with the Sumerian tales of Anunnaki, who came here from another planet in our own solar system? How does it dovetail with the tales in the Bible? It dovetails by saying that this entity, whether it has a shape, whether it has a form, I don't know, acts through emissaries. And this is the meaning, according as I understand it and expound it in the book in the last chapter, this is the meaning of what God answered Moses. He says, I can be whoever I want to be. So I can be Enlil, I can be Enki.
Makes sense to me.
Because they are only my emissaries. Yes. And this, I think, is the real truth of what we have to understand from the Bible.
Yes. I attended a lecture once with Lee and Vivian Gladden, who I think I had mentioned before to you in passing, that wrote a book about the same subject. I think it was called Heirs of the Gods, where they talked about the celestials or the extraterrestrials or whatever, and they made the point that there were only two scriptures in the Bible, both Old and New, where the word God implied a divine, overshadowing, creative force in all creation, as opposed to all the other places, except those two, that talked about Elohim, which was different from the word...
These are gods with a small g.
Right.
This must be understood. These are gods with a small g, who in turn were the emissaries of God with the capital G. And in the New Testament, on which I'm not as an expert as I'm on the Old Testament, but even there, there is the statement that I'm Alpha and I'm Omega. I'm the first
beginning.
And I'm the last. I'm the beginning and I'm the end, which is exactly what the Hebrew prayer states.
That's a fascinating... there were so many questions in relation to that, but I'm very interested in the sons of God also. That is, were the Elohim the sons of God, or were the Elohim
they were the
sons
Anunnaki,
of God?
And it is their sons born on earth who married the daughters of Adam.
So then we could say then what you're saying is the Elohim were the ones that in the Hebrew is referred to as the sons of God.
No, the Elohim are what the Sumerians called Anunnaki.
Okay.
Those who from heaven to earth came. They are Elohim in the Bible. Indeed, when you encounter this term, and mostly in connection with the so-called pagan gods that are also called Elohim in the Bible. Indeed, at some point, Joshua gives the Israelites, before they cross the Jordan into the promised land,
Yeah,
they say,
that.
you now have a choice, like make up your mind. Do you want to follow the Elohim of Egypt? Do you want to follow the Elohim of Mesopotamia? Or do you want to follow Yahweh as the monotheistic concept of one God that rules, controls, designs, etc., everything?
You know, the prophet Daniel in the Old Testament, I think it's 4:23 in Daniel, says that he was given a vision by God where he saw the earth, and it was in a total, the words were a desolation, a destruction and a desolation of the world, in a vision taking him back to an ancient time. Can't remember exactly how the words were in Daniel, but that reminded me of Genesis 1:2, where it says that God created the heavens of the earth, or Elohim created the heavens of the earth, and the earth
I raise
was,
my hand
yeah.
to tell you that. I mean, indirectly you raise a very, very fundamental question for biblical scholars, and thus for theologians. In Hebrew, the sentence, the verse says, Bereshit, which is translated in the beginning. Elohim, God, created the heaven and the earth. And many, many theologians, for generations, even goes back to Talmudic times, even the time of the temple, the second temple, asked how could it be that the story of creation, of beginning, starts with the second letter of the alphabet, the bet, the beta, the B, and not with the first letter of the alphabet, the aleph, the alpha. It just beats logic, beats your beliefs. And what I show in my book, the latest one, Divine Encounters, is that if you add the aleph, which may have dropped somewhere along the rewritings, etc., of the Bible, it becomes that not Bereshit, Av Reshit, the father of beginning, created Elohim, the heaven and the earth.
Oh, okay.
So the supreme creator created the Anunnaki, Elohim, the heaven and the earth.
And that is a whole different subject.
That I really hope that through this interview and all all the exposure that it will thus give, that those who have the say in these matters would really consider this suggestion by me, that if you add the aleph, you give a whole new dimension to this first sentence of the first book of the Bible.
Very, very interesting, very important, I feel. The second scripture, where it says, and in that time God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void. I am told, as I have researched this, that it can be equally and legitimately translated a different way. Rather than the earth was without form and void, it can be translated the earth was a waste and a desolation, or became a waste and a desolation, implying that there was already an earth situated, then came a great destruction, and then the earth became a waste and a void. So that the implications, from what I can gather, is that Genesis 1:1 is saying what you have established, and then Genesis 1:2 is saying that the earth that we have today is a recreation or a new situation because it was an earth in former times that was destroyed.
Well, there are these interpretations of how to understand that verse, but of course there is a Sitchin interpretation
Right.
because it is clear, not just to me, to all scholars, that the story of creation and then continuation, the Tower of Babel, the Garden of Eden, and of course the deluge, the Great Flood, are really versions, concise versions based on the earlier Sumerian writings. People have to remember that Abraham was a Sumerian, and therefore that if these are versions of the Sumerian epic of creation, and Enuma Elish, then the words Tehom Rabbah, which are translated as chaos and all the other terms that you have mentioned, really refer to Tiamat, Rabbah, Tiamat the great Tiamat, and therefore it is precisely what the Sumerian texts say, that there was another planet and that perished in the celestial battle and the collision, and therefore the interpretation that you mentioned, though it is not linked to the words or to the name Tiamat, links to the same meaningful result. In other words, that Earth is the result of a celestial catastrophe. There was a catastrophe from which our
The
planet
Earth
emerged.
came from.
Right.
Yeah.
So it leads to the same conclusion in different ways, and maybe it's good that two approaches lead to the same conclusion.
Yeah, I have always felt that there was most likely another civilizations, ancient civilizations, even before, and this is just my own conjecture, even before the ones that we know of.
Definitely, you're absolutely right on that, because even according to the Sumerian tales, and especially, many texts, but especially the so-called King List, that deals with the cities, antediluvial cities, and with the 10 preceding the deluge, 10 rulers, which some compare to the 10 patriarchs in the Bible before the deluge. And there were cities, there was a civilization. The Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal, boasted that he could read tablets from before the flood. So all the indications are that they recognized, referred to, and accepted this fact that there was a civilization, but a civilization of the gods, because those cities, pre-diluvial, are spoken of as cities of the gods.
Right.
After the deluge, there came cities of men with the help of the Anunnaki. So there was a time of let's call it a divine civilization, divine culture. As you, I'm sure, know, in the Egyptian beliefs, the priest Manetho, who paralleled the Chaldean Berosus, they lived more or less at the same time, and the heirs of Alexander in what became eventually Byzantine hired a Babylonian priest to write the history of the world of mankind based on the Mesopotamian, and the Ptolemies in Egypt hired the Egyptian priest Manetho to do the same. But the versions are very similar. Both, by the way, spoke of a series of calamities that preceded the deluge. It's not clear at what intervals.
Calamities that would have preceded the deluge.
Yeah. The deluge was just one of them, the most remembered one, right? According to Berosus, indeed, they were alternating. There were calamities by heat and fire, and then there were calamities by water and cold, etc. And Manetho also spoke about dynasties of the gods,
Very interesting.
which is the Sumerian gods, because I show in my books, especially the one Stairway to Heaven, that they were one and the same, and that if you ask yourself what do the names mean, you see that the names meant the same, except this was in ancient Egyptian, this was in Sumerian, or later Babylonian, Akkadian. And then he said there was a period, according to Manetho, of almost 3,600 years of demigods, which meant offspring of the Anunnaki, like the sons of gods. And the Bible says, married the daughters of men and had children by them, and these would be called demigods.
Right.
And then only began the human civilization with the pharaohs around 3,100 BC. So what you are stating very succinctly is really can be supported and expanded by all these records from the past, some available more or less complete, many just in fragments.
Well, you know, about 20 years ago, I talked with the president of the American Rabbinical Association, who was a good friend of mine, and we used to carry on long conversations over the phone. And I asked him about, in Genesis 9, I believe it is, where this is after the flood of Noah's day, God says to Noah to go forth with his sons and daughters, sons and wives, and go forth and multiply and replenish the earth. Re obviously means do again.
Right.
And yes, that's understood. It was to, and obviously to redo the earth because God had destroyed so much of the life. But then again, if you go back, as I said to him, if you go back to Genesis 1, I believe it's 28, where God creates Adam and Eve, and he's telling the original couple to go forth, reproduce, and replenish the earth. Do it again.
No, the word again does not appear there. It says, Pru rvu mal'u et haaretz. Be fruitful in terms of having offspring. Revu, multiply, and fill the earth.
But it does not have replenish?
No.
Well, in the original, in some of the Bibles,
not regarding
it says
Adam. Well,
yeah, that's what that was
these
the
are
question.
the dangers of translations.
I know.
The translators really interpret.
Yeah.
No.
There are so many questions I know that I have wanted to ask in relation to the word El, El being one of the. Was El in fact a Hebrew word as such, or was El existing before the Hebrew language?
El is the Hebrew for what Hebrew stems from Akkadian.
Okay.
All Semitic languages stem from Akkadian. Canaanite, Phoenician, Moabite,
Right.
etc. stem from Akkadian, which was the language that came after the demise of the Sumerian civilization, a little before, and Babylonian, Assyrian. Right. So when I read an Assyrian text, it's almost like Hebrew. I mean, not exactly. There are dialects and so on. So the Hebrew word El, which is usually translated God or divine being, really is from the Akkadian Ilu, ILU.
ILU, yes.
ILU.
Yes.
And it meant literally the lofty one. So if you want to be very precise, you have to translate wherever it says El, you have to say the lofty one. Now, I was asked...
You mean the elites? The lofty one.
You never know. You
That's
never
right.
know. Maybe elite comes from that. Yeah. Well, here's a new subject.
Right.
I was asked, for example, by my brother, about, he says, well, if Yahweh told Moses, who persisted to know, what is your name, what is your name? He said to him, call me, whatever, or he really told him, tell the Israelites that Ehyeh asher ehyeh, whoever I want to be, I'll be sent you to be my spokesman, emissary. So my brother asked me, and then it says there that he says, I did not tell my name to Abraham or to Isaac.
That's right. Yes.
So my brother said, so when Abraham referred to whoever told him, leave your home, go to Canaan, do this, do that.
Who was he talking to?
When he went to his wife, when he went to Isaac
Okay.
and said, I'm supposed to take you to Mount Moriah.
Who did he say?
Who did he say told me that?
Yeah.
Good question, if he had no name. I said, well, we find an answer to that because after Abraham saved his nephew Lot from the attackers who came from Mesopotamia, you know, the war of the kings of the east against the Canaanite kings. He saved him. He was met at the gates of the future Jerusalem by the high priest who offered him bread and wine. And he wanted to offer Abraham some of the booty, some of the, you know, material. And Abraham said, no, I did it because El Elyon instructed me to do it. El Elyon means the supreme El. Not the lofty one, which would be an Anunnaki, but the one who is above them, which takes you back to God with the capital G, etc., etc.
I'm so very appreciative of your time, but I really have to ask you something that's important to me. In my particular work in examining the occult or hidden symbolism in our modern day religious and political movements, I became fascinated about 20 years ago with the symbol of the sun as it is used by the secret societies, the fraternal orders, and especially in our political and religious symbolism today. It was fascinating to me that the sun, when you brought up that what we're talking about, or it was, I guess David Talbot even talked about the sun being Saturn, but the sun has been used, that sun symbol with the winged sun, you brought out, was the symbol of the Anunnaki?
And the symbol of Nibiru, of the so-called 12th planet.
All right, so that implies...
Because as I showed you on these monuments, which I shall just do of them, I could choose many more. And that symbol, by the way, also appears on Egyptian monuments and Hittite monuments.
Yeah.
Right, this was the symbol connecting the king, the priesthood with their gods, with the small g. That was the symbol of the planet. And as I showed on the same monument, which gives the 12 members of the solar system, you definitely see the sun, you know, with its rays, totally separate, and the symbol of the what's called the winged disk. And Earth.
Okay, so you see them simultaneously together.
On the same depictions, which are repeated and repeated, and you see Earth as the 7th planet. In many instances, you see Venus as the 8th planet with 8 rays. You see Mars as the 6th planet with 6 rays. So everything corroborates what I've written.
Well, the sun, as I said, is a particularly important symbol to me because I see it in so many political and religious depictions and symbols. And of course, with the coming of Christianity, the concept that the Messiah is God's son, and I believe that there can be a comparison made between the ancient a veneration of the sun, S-U-N in our language, as opposed to a veneration of the individual, S-O-N, And I think probably that has some problems with our languages and interpretation. But what do you think about the symbol of the sun itself and the importance to the ancients, like the Sumerians, etc.?
Well, if you're talking about the winged disk, then this stood for the planet from which the Anunnaki came. In Sumerian times, with the ensuing Babylonian and Assyrian, the sun god, Utu in Sumerian, Shamash in Hebrew and all the other languages, was not a significant deity at all in the hierarchy. The Shamash, according to the Sumerian, and therefore further on believed by the Assyrians, Babylonians, and others, was the son of the god that in Akkadian is called Sin, not from sinning, but it really was from Sumerian Suen. And he was the moon god. So according to these hierarchies, Shamash was the son of the moon god. Not so when it came to Nibiru. The ruler of the Miru stood at the head of the pantheon. So the pantheon had to do with the Anunnaki, from where they came, and the ruler there was the head, and his symbol was the winged disk. So this really has to do with all these misconceptions about who the ancient peoples really worshipped.
Whether that's what I'm trying to get to.
And many books written, especially at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of this century, say they were these or that people were sun worshippers, and this was a sun religion, and the Egyptian called Ra. Some say Re, but it's Ra. I mean, the same people who spell it Re, R-E, then go and write the name of the pharaoh Ramses. Ramses, which means issue, emanating from Ra. So when they say the name of the pharaoh, they say Ra, but when they say the name of the god, they spell it Re. So it's Ra, because it also appears in the Bible. So they say he was the sun god. He was not the sun god. He was the god who came from the planet of millions of years, which is the parallel of Nibiru. A planet, definitely planet, not the sun. So there's so many misconceptions that it may take a century to get rid of, because it's an accumulation of 2-3 centuries of research.
In my collection, I have about 4 or 5, I think it's 5, 2 of them are doctoral theses, and others are articles, long, extended articles appearing in the Middle East on the word chief cornerstone. And I picked up on that. That was a fascinating study where the word chief cornerstone is translated from the Hebrew when it appears in Hebrew, which is, I think, Psalms 118:22, where Messiah is referred to as the chief cornerstone. While in the Christian Greek scriptures of the New Testament, the Messiah or Jesus is referred to twice as the chief cornerstone. That word chief cornerstone, what does it actually imply for the Messiah in both Psalms and in the Greek? Have you?
It is not cornerstone. In other words, when you lay the foundation, you have a cornerstone.
Right.
It's the apex stone. Rosh Pinah, the head where the sides meet, like in a pyramid, the apex stone, the top stone, the one that is really the conduit to the heavens.
Yeah, because that's what these articles were all saying. Everyone was saying it was the pinnacle of a pinnacle.
Pinnacle,
yes.
But not foundation stone on the ground.
Now, the big question, of course, obviously is going to be, on the back of the $1 bill, of course, is the Egyptian pyramid with the 72 stones of the 72 names of God, I believe. But the implication
with the apex floating heavenward.
Right.
Yeah.
And if that is
which
in
is
fact,
the Masonic symbol.
that's right. But it is also, as you brought out, the word actually in Hebrew in Psalm
Rosh Pinah,
118,
yeah.
which means the peak of the pinnacle.
The pinnacle
And remember,
stone.
even in the New Testament, when Satan takes Jesus to the temple to tempt him, the scripture says he takes him up to the pinnacle of the temple, to the point of the temple. I am totally sure that there's a lot of symbolism that the early.
Yeah.
That
I
the
think
early
we should
ones-
rewrite the Bible
Yeah.
in English, not in Hebrew.
That's very important
As a
to
matter of
me.
fact, I was thinking about a new translation based on my understanding of
I think that would be absolutely important for so many people in the Western world to get a better grasp on the symbolism, the implications of the original words, where they came from, and just get a new understanding from where all of this came.
well, with your help.
Yes, I would love
It
to
may
do
come
that.
to be.
Is there anything else you might tell us about that symbol of the pinnacle or the chief cornerstone, and how that might be of importance to us, particularly in this time that we're living, when everyone seems to be especially in the Christian world, looking for the Messiah? What would be your thoughts on the concept of the Messiah being the chief cornerstone, the coming back, God's
You don't
kingdom?
think I'll be drawn into that? No.
I don't.
No.
Oh, okay.
You tried. But,
Okay.
no.
All right. Because I will go on record as saying I think that there is an entire story here that needs to be looked at. This whole concept of a coming kingdom of God, the messianic kingdom, the chief cornerstone, the ancient gods. There seems
I
to
think
be.
that the literal translation, even from the New Testament, is not just the second coming, the second, but the return of the kingdom of heaven, right?
Yes, return. That brings us to probably
To the conclusion of this interview.
well, the planet Nibiru. Is there anything I can have you say concerning the return of Nibiru that you?
Not yet, but
Okay.
I promise you another interview
I promise.
when I can speak about it.
Let me again say that it is not only a pleasure but an honor to be with you, and I
Well,
do very much appreciate your time.
It's always a pleasure to be interviewed by someone who knows almost as much as I do. I leave a little for myself.
You are a giant,
Thank you.
and I
Thank you,
appreciate your
Jordan.
time. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
And thank you very much for watching. This is Jordan Maxwell.